Walk through the streets of Mozambique, and you will hit the candonga. This is the informal street market, an energetic network of hand-to-hand transactions that serves as the lifeblood of the local economy. Despite its vibrancy, this entire engine is illegal. It operates in the shadows because the formal state system has failed to provide even the most basic necessities for its people. To understand why these state systems repeatedly fail to feed their own citizens, we have to look back to 1920. That is when economist Ludwig von Mises formalized the economic calculation problem. Mises observed a rigid logical sequence. Without private property, buyers and sellers lack the freedom to negotiate. Without that freedom, real markets cannot exist. By outlawing the market, the government effectively destroys its own ability to measure economic reality.
The state loses the information required to allocate resources, making severe shortages and systemic starvation inevitable. Prices function as a decentralized communication network. Each number acts like a flare gun, signaling exactly where a resource is scarce and where human labor is most valued. This blueprint illustrates the dilemma of building a factory when you are forbidden from knowing the cost of materials. Without price tags on coal, solar panels, or steel, planners have no mathematical way to weigh one resource against another. Attempting to manage a nation's resources without this network of prices is like trying to fly a commercial airliner while wearing a blindfold. You have no instruments to tell you if you are climbing toward prosperity or diving into a mountain. The central planner becomes a blind pilot, incapable of distinguishing between economic efficiency and catastrophic waste. If central planning is mathematically doomed to fail, how did economies like Cuba's remain stable for decades under Fidel Castro? The stability was an illusion. For decades, the Soviet Union pumped billions of dollars into the island. That external capital acted as artificial life support, lubricating the internal gears of an economic engine that was already shattered. These records show what happened when the support vanished. When the Soviet Union fell in the 1990s, the subsidies disappeared, and the true blindness of the Cuban economy was instantly exposed. The human consequences were devastating. Agricultural supply chains collapsed because planners had no internal prices to guide them. Citizens were limited to a single piece of bread a day, while doctors in crumbling hospitals were forced to reuse unsterilized syringes. Cuba's collapse proved that a planned society's stability is often a mirage funded by outside capital. True development was never being guided, it was only being temporarily bought. In modern Mozambique, foreign aid and massive private investments provide that same mask. This influx of capital allows the government to function and expand services without ever having to build a productive or efficient internal economy. This creates a rentier state, where the ruling elite extracts wealth from foreign inflows rather than from the success of their own citizens. Using Nassim Taleb's concept of skin in the game, we can see why this is so dangerous. Because the elite are funded from the outside, they are shielded from the risks of their own decisions. They remain prosperous while the public absorbs the impact of every policy failure. This setup destroys the society's error correction mechanisms. The economic pain that would normally force a regime to change its ways is never felt by the people in charge. They have effectively cut the nerves that allow a nation to feel and respond to its own failure. Since the decision-makers feel no financial loss from their errors, they have every incentive to perpetuate the system. This traps the nation in a permanent equilibrium of stagnation that is remarkably stable for those at the top. Economic calculation is a prerequisite for human survival. When the state goes blind, the people cannot afford to wait for the government to fix its math. We see a spontaneous reaction the moment the state outlaws organic prices. Citizens immediately recreate them in the shadows. This juxtaposition shows the sterile, empty shelves of the formal economy above and the thriving barter system of the black market below. Just as Cuban factory workers once traded cigars for basic clothing, Mozambicans built the vast candonga networks to bypass state failure. This underground market is a society's immune response. It is the grassroots fight for survival against a government that has destroyed its own internal communication system. The irony is that this shadow network functions because it uses the exact price signals that the central planners are trying to banish. Calling these nations developing is a fundamental lie. chronic poverty persists because it serves as the end product of a business model that works perfectly for the elites who manage the machine.